Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to News and Views on Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. My name is Shabnam Palesa Mohammed, standing in for Selailo. And the last segment for today's show is that much anticipated must watch interview that I recorded last night with Professor Micheal Rectenwald, who is the founder of the anti Zionist American Political Action Group, or AZAPAC. It is a no holds barred look into a strategy to take back power for the people in the US against Zionism, which has certainly occupied not only Palestine, but indeed the US and many other countries around the world. It is informative, it is engaging, it is empowering. I would encourage you to watch with attention, to learn some ideas, but also to share this interview across all your platforms and your networks. So thank you very much for joining us this morning on News and Views on Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. Please do watch this entire interview with Professor Micheal Rectenwald from AZAPAC. And we close that interview. You'll hear us say it by saying the power of the people is greater than people in power. Thank you very much for joining us again. Assalamu alaikum. Hello and welcome to News and Views with Shabnam Palesa Mohammed for Salam Media, wherever you might be in the world. A very, very warm welcome. Please share the link to this interview. I promise it's one you're not going to want to miss. I have with me the founder of AZAPAC, the Anti-Zionist American Political Action Group, Professor Micheal Rectenwald. It is an honor to have you join us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to lean into this very important conversation, Micheal, by sharing AZAPAC's latest latest promotional video, talking about what AZAPAC is, what is its mission, why is it important, how does it affect ordinary Americans, and what is the call to action. Then we launch into some rapid fire questions. I've got a lot of questions to ask you. So let's begin with this video. You can find the AZAPAC account on X. AZAPAC, as you can see, the anti-Zio-Am-Pac. This is the video, November 17th, that we'll be having a look at right now.
Only to serve a foreign nation state. But the fact is, our government acts like the servant of another country. That other country is, of course, the State of Israel. That's not policy. That's a national disgrace. I'm Micheal Rectenwald, founder of the Anti-Zionist America Political Action Committee, or AZAPAC. Let's cut to the chase, shall we? The U.S. government has been hijacked by forces loyal to Israel. Does Congress represent us? No. With rare exceptions, they work for Israel. These aren't your elected reps, they're puppets. And their strings are pulled by donors loyal to the modern nation state of Israel. This isn't an alliance, it's extortion. While we're scraping by, eggs at $6 a dozen, rent or mortgage devouring our paychecks, our leaders have funneled over $21 billion to Israel in 2 years, not counting the cost of U.S. engagements in the region at Israel's behest. The total cost to U.S. taxpayers in service of Israel is an estimated $33 billion since October 7th, 2023. That's on top of the $3.8 billion sent Israel every year. Billions that could fix our roads. Billions that could fund our schools. Billions that could house our veterans. Billions that could ease your burden. But no, they fund endless Israeli aggression instead. Israel, the largest recipient of U.S. aid in history. Israel, the country that bombed the USS Liberty. Israel, the country using our weapons to mass murder innocents. 20,000 children, to be exact. Gaza ripped off the mask. We all watched the live-streamed horrors. The money extorted from us funds crimes against humanity, what genocide scholars and dozens of humanitarian organizations call a genocide. This blind allegiance, this veto on our national sovereignty, this denial of reality must end. We've had more than enough. AZAPAC isn't here to beg. We're here to evict. We're backing warriors who spit in the face of this cabal. Jose Vega in New York, confronting the uniparty machine. He's challenging APAC darling Richie Torres. Mike Wilnaugh in Florida, an America-only patriot challenging Daniel Webster, a fossilized incumbent who serves everyone but the American people. Aaron Baker, also in Florida. He rejects APAC bribes and demands an end to the foreign aid grift. He's challenging the biggest Zionist of them all, Randy Fine.
Tucker Carlson is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America.
AZAPAC isn't a protest, it's a reclamation. America isn't a vassal state. We're no one's colony. We're not supposed to be an ATM and munitions depot for Israel. If you're done with the fear, done with our politicians taking bribes, done with being smeared with the anti-Semitic label just because you want your country back, then AZAPAC is your army. Head to AZAPAC.com. That's AZA-PAC.com right now. Donate, volunteer, amplify, join the fight. Because we're not pleading for our country back, we're taking it.
Fantastic. That is a powerful video. It hits all the notes, as we said earlier, from the emotional authenticity to the cold hard facts of how much Israel, the Zionist settler colony, or state if you'd like, I don't recognize it as a state, is extracting from the US taxpayer, the poor and the working class. How many times have you been called an anti-Semite since founding AZAPAC, Micheal?
It's countless. I really can't keep track of it. It's so often that I totally ignore it. It's meaningless, I think. This is a weapon that the Zionists use to indemnify, to immunize themselves from criticism and to destroy critics, to destroy all opposition. That's one of their major weapons and shields. So, yeah, numerous times, and it runs off my back like water off of a duck.
Absolutely. So, Micheal, that video tells us a lot about the motivation behind founding AZAPAC. But tell us more personally, what was that final catalyst where you said, because this is a huge mission and it doesn't come without threats, intimidation, bribery, sabotage, and so on and so forth. But what was that final moment where you said, this is my calling? This is what I'm going to do. We are going to launch AZAPAC.
It really wasn't any particular moment. It was 2 years plus of watching in horror the Gaza genocide and realizing that the United States was Israel's most important enabler of destruction, and recognizing that if not for the United States supporting and endlessly supplying Israel with aid and military equipment and arms, that this genocide would not be likely happening, and that Israel would not continue its belligerence against all of its neighbors. And without the United States backing it up as Israel's bulldog, and as I put it in the video, its munitions depot and ATM or money teller, then this would not be happening. So I felt very responsible for doing something about the United States' complicity in all of this horror, and that something had to be done. It wasn't enough to call representatives, which I did and which many of us did, to protest, which I did and many of us did, to tweet, to write, to do podcasts, to write essays, which I did, all of this. Something had to be done. Something has to happen. Some change must take place within the U.S. political system. And yeah.
Interestingly enough, Micheal, apartheid Israel supported apartheid South Africa because they're two sides of the same coin. But when you zoom out and take a 30,000-foot view, this is a question I keep asking myself. Which is the dog and which is the tail? between the US and Israel within the context of the Epstein files. And we know Epstein was working as part of Israeli intelligence, amongst others. What do you see as the answer to that question? Is Israel a military base of imperialism, or is Israel running the US as occupied as Palestine?
That's a great question, and it's one I get a lot. And I see, both sides. I think that the United States gains nothing from its relationship with Israel. We're completely yanked by the chain. So I think the tail is wagging the dog very hard. And there's no benefit to the U.S. of all of this horror that we're inflicting through Israel on Gaza and its neighbors in Iran and North Lebanon and elsewhere. This is really to benefit Israel. Even the Iraqi war, which the United States fought utterly without reason and completely illegally and immorally, destroying all the Iraqis' lives and killing hundreds of thousands, displacing millions. All of this was at the behest of Israel. I don't know what the American empire gets out of this, except that Israel is basically telling the United States what to do in our foreign policy and elsewhere, and I think our domestic policy now as well. So I think it's the United States is the kind of the accomplice of Israel's crimes against humanity. We're an accomplice. The United States, I shouldn't say we're, because it's the U.S. government, which we are very much opposed to in terms of the popular will. I believe that the majority of Americans want nothing to do with this. And there's a huge disconnect between the popular will and the political class and their allegiance to Israel. And that particular rift is what we need to exploit in the United States. We need to attack that rupture between the political class and the popular will of the United States.
Absolutely. And we're certainly seeing the tide turning, in particular amongst young people who don't assume the position of, standing up for Israel, right or wrong, and that whole trope of Israel, our greatest ally. And of course, we're seeing people like Tucker Carlson and others coming out quite strongly on that perspective. But certainly, when you look at who and what is to benefit, people like Jared Kushner have described Gaza essentially as a Riviera playground for the so-called elite, or as I prefer to call them, the parasite or predator class. And certainly, Palestine has access to, or should have access to, its own resources, such as the natural gas and the fertile soil. But of course, Israel is stealing all of those resources. Now, with colonizing Gaza completely, heaven forbid, US oil companies and energy companies would also have access to that energy by saying to Israel, well, you've got to pay us back. I mean, I just heard Trump recently, this evening, in fact, say that he signed over the Golan Heights. Had he known what it was worth, he would have asked to have been paid for it. So nothing less than, a sleazy real estate agent. But certainly there are companies like Chevron and British Gas which seek to benefit from this colonization of Palestine. And by extension, of course, greater Israel. They're not going to stop there. What are your thoughts on this expanded project? Because certainly the methods that are being used in Gaza will be turned around in an imperial boomerang on the people in the US.
I agree 100%. So the relationship, I think, is like this. Zionism is a political ideology that is embraced by the Israeli government and the Israeli people, most of them, if not all. And it is the fuel, the ideological superstructure, if you will, that fuels the base for the military industrial complex and the oil industries and, of course, all the corporate interests that are going to be descending upon Gaza to harvest its wealth and just steal it, blatantly steal it. So, if the question is, what's the relationship here? I think Zionism is the ideology that feeds the beast and feeds the military-industrial complex, and indeed, Greater Israel is the project, at least. if not further domination around the world for the Zionist agenda. And it's despicable that you have Trump and Jared Kushner and the whole tribe of Zionists running the government, looking at the Gaza Strip as a piece of real estate to be parceled up, divided, and conquered by the Western allies, particularly Israel and the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that there's some sellouts in the so-called Middle East as well who are going along with the so-called Abraham Accords, etc., all of them wanting a piece of the pie. But I want to talk about your strategy in AZAPAC because it's a very clear, well thought out strategy, which is putting forward anti-Zionist political candidates. I have had the pleasure of interviewing Jose previously. He stands up very famously at these events and speaks truth to power. So I was very happy to see him as one of your candidates. Talk to us about this political strategy and where you see it headed.
Well, yes. So first of all, I thought that Congress is the best entry point for getting rid of Zionists and replacing them with anti-Zionists. And because these are the most frequent races and they're cheaper than the Senate, and yet they have a tremendous amount of power over the budget. And so the strategy was to target and is to target particular Zionists in office and to remove them. So we took aim at some of the most prominent Zionists and symbolically important Zionists in a sense. For example, Jose Vega running against Richie Torres, a total APAC darling and bribe taker. And then we also looked at Randy Fine because he is the most despicable Zionist in Congress. I mean, this guy is a dehumanizer of the Palestinians. He called for their extinction, starvation, and bombing using nuclear weapons. The guy's evil. And so we thought if we could overturn that race in particular, it would not only be a political victory, but a huge symbolic victory that would then spill over into further political power. We need to attack the fact that APAC and the other, there are many other PACs, JPAC, APAC, J Street, Kufi, Christians United for Israel, that is, all of these PACs combined to extort and to bribe and control our political class. So the idea is to take out as many Zionists as possible in this first round that will be involved in the midterm elections at the congressional level, and then we'll move out into the state level in the Senate. That is, we'll move into the Senate and then local offices as well, because not only in the state offices, not only does the federal government fund Israel and arm Israel, but these states buy Israeli bonds and support Israel in other ways. Like even Florida, under Ron DeSantis, Florida actually sent arms to Israel. Florida, the state of Florida, sent arms. So we know that the states are important too. And of course, many states have passed anti-BDS law, making it impossible for any localities within those states, townships or whatever, to break contracts with Israeli companies and turning it into a crime and effectively making it impossible because they would then get cut from all funding from the state. I mean, this is happening in Texas. This is happening in many states across the union. So we know that the state level is important, but right now our key is to get into the federal offices and to flip as many of those races as possible.
Right. It's a great strategy. I was interviewing an ambassador of Venezuela earlier on today. And part of of course, we know Venezuela is being attacked and is likely going to be bombed and going to go through exactly what has happened in Palestine and what is being threatened on Nigeria, again, using the same divide and conquer tactics. And part of the conversation was about the need for the global South and its allies in the West to unite against Zio-Imperialism. Now,
Yes.
the advert makes a very powerful argument on the costs. How are you finding your audience respond from the so-called left and right? I believe in the 99%. I think the left and right is just it's a mirage that we can overcome. How are you
Yeah.
finding the response to your costs argument as part of AZAPAC's appeal?
Well, we've had tremendous, if you're asking like how have people responded to our appeal, it's been enormous. We've had an enormous response. We have so much growth that's going on. We can't control it. We're burgeoning with donors, thousands of donors, hundreds of volunteers. The organization is splitting at its seams with growth. So we see that, and we think that the support is both left and right, so-called. I agree with you 100%. It is not the left-right axis that is important. It's the vertical axis, the up-down axis, the people versus the ruling class, and the ruling class is a Zionist ruling class. So I agree that mirage of left and right is actually a psyop for the most part that's run to keep us divided. And I've been arguing that the so-called left and right must unite against Zionism. We must unite. We do have interests that are common in opposing it, and that should be obvious. But I think I have brought in, I think, using AZAPAC, we have harnessed an enormous fervor, anti-Zionist fervor that has been building on the right in particular. That is something that's pretty new because the left, so-called, has always been fairly organized with reference to Zionism, but has been unable to stop it because it doesn't get at the voters and the political will coming from the right wing. And now we think we're harnessing both left and right, so-called, to oppose Zionism.
So, Micheal, in the video, you talk about $33 billion in the last 2 years alone.
Right.
And of course, and this is part of what we talked about in my interview with the Venezuelan ambassador, that American taxpayers should rather have that money to invest in healthcare and education and social services. It's a travesty, honestly. At this rate, how soon before the United States of America will be functionally bankrupt?
We're on the verge of it now. And now Trump wants to, and he's announcing effectively that the United States is going to pay for the reconstruction in Gaza. Just unbelievable. So we're being robbed to kill people. We're being robbed for mass murder, crimes against humanity. And now we're going to be robbed for rebuilding what Israel destroyed. And it won't be rebuilt for the Palestinians, as we know. It'll be rebuilt as a kind of prison camp for the remaining Palestinians under this so-called peace administration, which is nothing but a confabulation of war criminals deciding on how they're going to divide the spoils in Gaza. It's a criminal enterprise through and through. And this is what we're trying to point out to the American taxpayer. You're being robbed for all of this. You're being extorted and to pay for these crimes. And people, that does not sit well with people. They do not like it. I believe that morally, the American people are morally sound people generally. It is the U.S. government which is criminal. And that's what we're underscoring.
Well, in general, people are not their governments and governments are not their people, except for Israelis, 83%
Yes.
of whom agree that genocide is okay. So I want to talk also about Zionism or Zio-Imperialism's impact on the African continent. That's where we're based. Sudan is being provided with weapons from the Zionist entity, but also from the UAE. Increasing evidence shows. Similarly, Congo's blood diamonds, extracted under huge suffering and chaos and destruction, is fueling and funding the genocide in Palestine. Certainly, Zio-Imperialism is making great efforts on the African continent to capture it one way or another, either through chaos, through intimidation, or through bribery. And bribery in the form of offering health benefits. Let us set up your health system. Give us all of your health data, which is of course an absolute disaster given the propensity to create biological weapons once they have DNA data. So certainly there should be a strong interest in Africa standing against Zio-Imperialism. What are your thoughts on a regional approach to standing against this scourge on humanity in a massive effort to free ourselves from this parasitic entity called Zio-Imperialism?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm not going to be able to speak intelligently about what what the region of African region should do, but I can speak to the idea that we need to find and connect all the allies that we have against the Zionist enterprise. And that includes the Americans, that includes British, that includes Africans, that includes South Americans, that includes Central Americans. It includes everybody in the globe, because we all are being attacked effectively. We're all under attack by Zionism. They're trying to take over our governments. They're trying to take over in the United States, they're trying to erode, if not completely eradicate, our rights of free speech and association using the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, as it's called, and the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, making all kinds of criticism of Israel illegal. So we need to unite nationally, internationally, to oppose this. And I call on, and I'm willing to help any country that wants to set up an organization like ours in their own countries. We are willing to help you model that and replicate it throughout the globe. For what that's worth, that's our offer.
Fantastic. Before I let you go, Micheal, I have to ask you, what is the call to action? How can people support AZAPAC's incredibly important work in freeing humanity, really, doing your part to free humanity?
Yeah, I mean, there's three things basically. The first thing is you can amplify the message, spread the word, get our website out, get our video out, get as much exposure to what we're doing as possible. This helps to bring in more donors. We need 50 million Americans to donate $50. I'm sorry, we need roughly 1 million Americans to donate something like $50 each. And that'll be enough for us to go at AZAPAC and the rest of the cabals, PACs and lobbies will be in the game. So this is a grassroots movement. We are not a super PAC. We're relying on the individuals to contribute and to volunteer, to amplify the message, and to get us into position to knock these Zionists out of office. This is incumbent upon us as Americans, not only for our own sovereignty, but for the welfare of people around the world.
Well, indeed, the power of the people is greater than people in power. Professor Micheal Rectenwald, the founder of AZAPAC, thank you for joining us on News and Views, brought to you by Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism.
Thank you so much for having me.